All right, everybody, how's it going? We're here Friday the 13th, actually. I didn't realize that. Um, and we're here recording our, seventh or eighth Baklava broadcast. I'm Rahul, and I'm joined, as usual, by John Rodriguez. John, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Rahul?
And Kurt Russell. Kurt, what are you up to, man?
Just enjoying a Budweiser.
Whoa, nice. So, this is kind of an interesting week, I guess, because we are at the All-Star break now. So we can get into that stuff, and then we can talk about some trade rumors as well, because the trade deadline is coming up next week, so that's approaching pretty fast. But before we do that, let's start off with the Cavs like we usually do. So, Kurt, you want to give us a quick recap if you have that?
Yeah, so since our last podcast, the Cavs played 3 games. We beat the Lakers by 15, beat Miami by 20, and then last night kind of got thrashed by the Bulls by 15. Kevin Love wasn't able to play in that game, and it was pretty noticeable. We got absolutely dominated on the glass, especially their offensive glass kind of tore us apart. So it was in Chicago, though, and they got Mike Dunleavy back. Jimmy Butler didn't play, but Chicago's starting to look pretty good again, so I don't really mind that one. The other 2 wins just have to be expected against subpar teams like that. So kind of about what I expected, and hopefully after the All-Star break, we just keep up our high level of play. We've really been on a tear since basically for the past month. Actually, we've just really seemed to be hitting our stride since we made these trades. So, John, you got anything to add?
Uh, yeah, just about like the same thoughts. I think in particular, like that Bulls game, you see, we're kind of just. I think we were just looking forward to the All-Star break, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we've won the last, 14 of 15, and then actually Derrick Rose looked really good in this game in particular. So going forward, I think the Bulls, they were struggling before this. They dropped like their last 10 of their last 15 before kind of going on a little run. I think a 4-game winning streak before the All-Star break. So that's something to keep an eye on. And then they have like role players like Tony Snell who actually played pretty well against us too. So I mean, if they're fully healthy when it comes playoff time, it's definitely a team that we're gonna run into. So yeah, overall, good to see the Cavs get into the All-Star break on a run like that, and hopefully Kevin Love can get healthy over this time period and finish off the season well. So yeah, Rahul, what do you think of this last week?
Well, we played the Bulls like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and we beat them pretty well. But it was like the exact opposite story because I think yesterday Kyrie just had a terrible game, and then Derrick Rose dominated him. Whereas like just a few weeks ago it was the other way around. So I think Derrick Rose kind of probably feels like he has something to prove,
Yeah.
and he went real hard yesterday. Um, And then I remember Mozgov basically shut down Pau Gasol um, in the second meeting, and then yesterday Pau Gasol had a pretty nice game too. So I don't think the Cavs and the Bulls are going to meet in the first round. I think we're both going to be too high to play each other in the first round, but I think it's definitely possible that we see the Bulls maybe in the second round of the playoffs. So something hopefully to work on and figure out. Kurt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the box score. It had to do a double take. So LeBron in his 34 minutes was minus 27, and Tony Snell in his 38 minutes was plus 29.
Wow.
Tony Snell's good, man.
That's just, I mean, yeah, he was 9 of 11 with 22 points. I just couldn't believe that plus minus, like, I wonder when the last time LeBron was minus 27. That
Yeah.
seems They,
Well, Blatt benched LeBron for a decent portion of that second quarter too, like the last 5 minutes, because LeBron had like 5 turnovers in like
yeah,
the first half or something crazy like that. So
yeah, 8 for the game.
yeah, so not LeBron's best game at all, but
Yeah,
overall,
yeah,
pretty good streak for the Cavs.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, this is definitely not like a bad loss. Especially like a Thibodeau coach team. They've been struggling to play with a high level of consistency and intensity, but yeah, you could pretty much tell, like you guys said, that we were pretty interested in heading towards the All-Star break, I think, and didn't really have a whole lot vested in the game. James Jones played 30 minutes though, which is probably more than he's played the whole season, so he's probably pretty
He's
sore.
probably he's probably dead right now.
And I still think it's weird that like Sean Marion at the beginning of the season was playing 25 30 minutes a game, and now he's lucky to crack double digits. So something, I know he's old, but it's just something to look for. I guess Shumpert's kind of taking his minutes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
not enough minutes to go around on this team. That's a good problem at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And somebody that hasn't played any minutes all season, a certain Paul George,
your
who
transitions are flawless. I just want to throw that out there. It's just pounced.
thank you,
That's awesome.
thank you.
Yeah.
He apparently is aiming to return in mid-March, which, yeah, I guess it would be about a month from now. So, we got the nice All-Star break coming up. I'm not exactly sure approximately how many games he would miss after this. The Pacers right now are 21 and 33, 2 games out of the 8th seed. So, Mr. Rodriguez, if Paul George returns in mid-March, and you know about how many games would be left, I'm not sure. Do you think the Pacers will make the playoffs? And if so, what seed do you see them landing at?
Yeah, so if you look at the Eastern Conference playoff picture, I guess heading in the All-Star break, you really have, I would say, 12 teams competing for 8 spots. And so, especially what we've seen pretty consistently throughout the year is the 7 and 8 seed being wide open, and basically, Indiana is in that 12 spot right now, but they're only 2 games back of the 7 seed, which is Charlotte. So, yeah, I do see the Pacers sneaking into the playoffs here. Um, I think they've played really well lately with George Hill back at point guard, like we've mentioned before when the Cavs played them and beat them last week. I think he really helps them out, and I think if they stay healthy and if Paul George comes back and maybe he's not 100% or the player we saw before his injury like right away, but playing him over like say like a Solomon Hill or something is really going to elevate their team, I think too. So I could see them. I think definitely they'll sneak into the 8. I could see 7 though too. So yeah, like we said last time too, that's a dangerous matchup for either I guess Atlanta or maybe even us in the first round. So yeah, Rahul, what do you think about the Pacers and this possible Paul George return?
I would love it if they made the playoffs and they played Atlanta, because that'd be like a reverse kind of like what's happened in the past, where like
Yeah.
Indiana's the powerhouse and
Yeah,
Atlanta kind of gets in. So that'd be a pretty cool series. I agree. I think that they will make the playoffs because, like you said, those last 2 seeds are separated by
2 games.
2 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from 7 to 12, there's a 2 game difference, and you have Charlotte, Miami, and Brooklyn, Boston, and Detroit ahead of Indiana, and none of those teams sound that great at all right now. So Indiana just plays hard, and in the East, that's probably enough to get you like the 8 seed. And just knowing that Paul George might come back, they're probably going to play that much harder. And yeah, you're right. George Hill doesn't sound like a great point guard, but when you're replacing like Donald Sloan, George Hill is like the man. So
Yeah.
um, I see it happening, and I definitely would not want to play them in the first round. I'd rather play Charlotte or Brooklyn or Boston or Detroit. Um, but I definitely see them making the playoffs, and I think that'd be kind of a cool story if Paul George was able to make a comeback. Kurt, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the schedule. If he's projected to come back in mid-March, that would leave around 20 games for him to impact their end of the season. But yeah, luckily for them, things are wide open. They're really four teams, not four teams. There are 6 teams competing for the final 2 spots. Because I'm sure Orlando, they're probably just going to totally tank the rest of the season. And
Yeah.
And Boston certainly doesn't want to make the playoffs, but I'm sure if they did, they wouldn't be too upset about it. So they have like 37 first-round picks in the next 4 years. But yeah, I think it's interesting when you look at Charlotte. They were playing really well recently. 8 and 2 in their last 10. Now they just lost 3 in a row. Just not really sure what's going on there. Kemba's out. Miami just still seems so bad. Brooklyn, pretty bad. Detroit was playing really well for a while, and they've made it back into the conversation. But yeah, I think Indiana is a team that if Paul George comes back for the last 15, 20 games, it'll be interesting to see if they keep up their current pace now. Then they'll definitely make it, because there's no way that they're not in 15 games going to catch like 2 games on all of these teams. Last season they were 56 and 26. I know they lost Lance Stevenson, but it's just a team that, like, Rahul said, they're very gritty. They're gonna, like, Frank Vogel. The fact that they're 21 and 33 with what they've had for most of the season, like, realistically, they should be like what Philadelphia is. They have hardly any talent on their team, and their defense is still one of the tops in the league without having Paul George, who he's got to be a top 5 wing defender.
Yeah.
So, and a guy that at the end of the game you just put him on the team's best player and let him shut him down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they have to make. And the 7 and 8 seed are pretty much interchangeable, so I'll put them at the 7 seed by the end of the season. But yeah, Rahul, what do you got for me?
I was just gonna say that it would be more likely that they didn't make the playoffs if Brandon Jennings didn't get hurt for Detroit, because Detroit was really trending upwards, and then once they lose him, they kind of
dropped off. Yeah, it's a good point.
If you guys want to move on to a different team, recently the Hornets acquired Mo Williams in a trade. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was for Gary Neal, Troy Daniels, and a second-round pick. So Gary Neal, Troy Daniels, and the second-round pick go to Minnesota, and Mo Williams goes to the Hornets. So, J-Rod, what's your initial thought on that trade?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a real big fan of what Michael Jordan has done in Charlotte, in his executive role, but I feel this was a great move by him and the rest of Charlotte's organization. If you just look at, what Kurt mentioned, Kemba's out. I think he's undergoing surgery on his knee.
He's out for another month or so.
Yeah, so that's tough for them because he was averaging like 19 points a game, and he was actually tied for 6th in the NBA in assists per turnovers. So he was by far their best player this year, and they got off to a pretty rough start. I remember, I think they were like 7 and 20 at one point. So they've been playing better lately, but they'll really miss his presence. So I feel the Mo Williams acquisition for what they gave up. Obviously Gary Neal, a beloved fan of the podcast members, but
Yikes.
Mo Williams. I mean, we've mentioned him before as he was possibly trade um, possibility for the Cavaliers. We always talk about the backup point guard we need, but yeah, he's a good veteran presence, and I think he'll help Charlotte and hopefully keep their playoff hopes alive. Yeah, Kurt, what do you think of the trade of Mo Williams?
Yeah, I'm sad to see that Gary's leaving because if Charlotte makes the playoffs, then I won't have a chance to watch my boy in action. But in all honesty, he's having nothing short of a terrible season. He's shooting around 36%, just a shade under. His PER is 10, which is very far below the league average. Averaging 9.6 points per game, but just not terribly efficient. And Mo Williams is actually having a decent season for a bad team, but at the point guard position, Charlotte severely lacking without Kemba, and I think it's a pretty solid move to get a guy like Mo, who, he's maybe not the greatest player, and he's certainly not known for his defense, which Charlotte has, I think, the 5th ranked defense in points per game, maybe 6th, around
Wow.
90 points per game. Which, yeah, I was surprised to see that too. But yeah, basically they gave up Gary, who just not doing a whole lot, and in return, getting a player who's actually going to contribute. So I think that's a solid move, and at least reassures fans that Charlotte's serious about making the playoffs this year. So definitely not a bad move at all.
Yeah, I think the Bobcats were starting Brian Roberts at point guard.
Isn't he a second baseman in the MLB?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But apparently there's a basketball player named Brian Roberts. So I don't think anybody knows who Brian Roberts is, but
Dude, he's from Dayton.
is he from Dayton?
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
explains why no one knows who he is then. But even once Kemba comes back, Mo Williams is going to be a great backup, much better upgrade than Brian Roberts. And then also Mo Williams and Al Jefferson are like best friends. I don't know if you guys knew that, but
Really?
yeah. So there's that. Yeah. And then I want to talk about the Wolves side of things. I think it's not a bad trade for them either because Mo Williams is going to probably win you a few games here and there, and I don't think the Wolves are kind of at that spot right now. They won games. So the Wolves get younger with the trade, a little more flexibility, a little more, or one more draft pick. They also just traded for Adrian Payne, who is an upgrade over Anthony Bennett, I guess. So the Wolves are clearly just building for their future, I think. So I think good trade for both sides is what I'd say. Yeah. What else we got?
I guess we could talk about Melo.
Okay.
And yeah, so Carmelo Anthony, he's been battling, I guess, some injuries or phantom injuries, whatever you want to say about it.
Yeah. I think it's a bruised ego is what it is.
What's that?
It's a bruised ego.
Ah, yeah.
That could definitely be.
Yeah, so there's news, I guess, after the All-Star break, after he's done coaching his, celebrity games and hanging out at the All-Star game, doing whatever he wants. He plans to shut it down for the season. The Knicks, obviously, they've struggled this year. They have, like, the worst record in the NBA, I think, now. So there's not really, I guess, any good reason for him to battle through any pains he's going through. So any quick thoughts on, Melo and what he's doing here and what he's kind of said about himself throughout this whole year, Rahul?
Yeah, I I think he does have something to play for, and that's like the fans. I don't know if that's just me, but like it's like he can clearly play if he's gonna play in the All-Star game. I understand that like if you just think of it purely academically, it's smart for him to shut it down, but where's the competitor in him?
Yep.
I mean, like where? I
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
he signed a huge contract too. I don't understand how you're just gonna sit through that. I was listening to that podcast with Jalen Rose, and that's all he talks about is players shutting it down when they can play. And I would just hate it if I was a New York Knicks fan because it's just I don't know, it's just kind of a cop out in my eyes. But I don't know, Kurt, do you agree or do you think it's the right move or what?
I actually I agree. Um, the I guess the fact that he's getting paid this an absolute absurd amount of money to play basketball and just isn't playing because he'd rather look forward to the next season. I just I don't really understand it either. Um, it's not like the average person. If the most people's salaries just aren't guaranteed, they can't just be like, oh wow, I'm getting paid for the year even if I don't show up. So I don't think a lot of pretty much any normal person won't be able to relate to this at all and wouldn't understand it. And maybe if you're a Knicks fan, if you're looking for the future, you'd understand. But as any person, especially like somebody who enjoys basketball, I don't really understand why he gets to sit out the whole year and still get paid. I think that doesn't really
Yeah.
seem to make any sense to me. So, um, but more time for our boy Louis Amundsen. So uh,
Didn't he get
there's
cut?
always a silver lining.
Yikes.
Johnny, you got anything to add? Any thoughts on Carmelo sitting?
Yeah, I kind of echo your guys' thoughts. I think the stuff he's done this year, I think he's become one of my least favorite players in the NBA. Um,
Yeah, dang.
just his actions and what he kind of is giving off is that he doesn't care about winning. He's not a real competitor. He's never going to win in the NBA. I just feel that way because he feels he commands so much attention and I don't think he's worth all that money, to be honest. I mean, he's a good scorer, yeah, and he can carry a team to an extent, but I don't think he's going to win you a championship with him on the team. Um,
I think he's kind of getting into that range where like he might be the best like second player, like the second best player on a championship team,
yeah,
almost like he needs another strong complementary piece. Like whereas you can have some guys like Durant and LeBron, that can just carry a team. I think those days are kind of past Melo at this point.
yeah, that's a good point. I think so too.
Yeah.
Dang,
I mean,
least favorite player.
yeah. Wait,
That's
who's
tough,
your
man.
least favorite player? That's what I was gonna ask because you said he's one of
Yeah.
one of your least favorites. So who's
Uh,
do you have a least favorite? 'Cause I know I do.
I can't really think of any. He might be it now. I don't know.
Huh?
Yeah,
I
what
got
about you guys?
Wait, I'm gonna
you.
guess yours, Kurt. I'm gonna guess yours.
You already know what it is. It's not a tough guess. You
Oh,
got it
Mario.
Wait,
right.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Mario?
Or Kendrick Perkins
Yeah.
too. He's up there.
What?
There you
Kendrick
go.
is his favorite player. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I love Kendra. And yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good point. I don't like Kendra either, just because they're both kind of the same player, I guess, in the fact that they're like sneakily dirty and try to. I mean, they play the mental game a lot, which is fine,
Yeah.
but I just don't really appreciate that Chalmers like thinks he's amazing when he goes off one game because he does have those games where he'll go off for like 20 something and have close to 10 assists, and then there are most of the games where he has like 6 points on 3 of 12 shooting and does absolutely nothing. He's very good at the pick and roll, but I feel like he just thinks he's a lot better than he actually is, and I think he should thank LeBron and Dwayne Wade for making his career last as long as it has, because if I look at any decent team, he's just not going to be a starting point guard. Maybe he should be a backup point guard on like a good team. But he's been blessed to play with some top-heavy teams. So the point guard position that he played didn't really matter because Wade and LeBron did most of the ball handling.
Yeah.
But just something quick about Melo.
Yeah.
It's hard to knock a guy for, I'm sure if any of us were offered a job where we were guaranteed to make, even if, his salary is what, I don't know, $22 million or something, even if we were guaranteed to make $5 million, and if we didn't have to show up to our job, obviously none of us are going to say no to that.
But here's the difference, though. It's that because you and me, we have sucky jobs. I can straight up say I don't love my job, and I'm sure you're not in love with your job. But like, if you're Carmelo, don't you like to play basketball? Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, true.
Well, first of all, for any of my fellow coworkers listening, I do love my job. But no, yeah, I would think that if you gotta know that these guys are just some of the most competitive just human beings around. That's how they've gotten to where they are. There are a lot of guys that are blessed with the height and the athleticism of guys in the NBA. Obviously college basketball is littered with them, but there are very few that make it, and there are very, very, very few that are good enough to earn max contracts. So, I don't know. As a competitor, I feel like if I was able to play at all, like, I would hate to not play. But, I don't know, maybe he's trying to preserve his career and realizes that, there's no repercussions to him not playing. He's still getting paid. And if maybe shutting it down this season ends up letting him play another season at the end of his career where he makes $5 or $6 million, then, maybe that's what it's about to him. I'm not sure.
We'll find out. We'll see if it pays off for him. I guess if it pays off for the next season, it makes sense. But
yeah, that is true.
J-Rod, anything to add before we move on?
Oh, no, I was just thinking about that least favorite player in the NBA more.
Oh yeah.
I got 3 more. Probably Matt Barnes, Kevin Garnett, and Dwight Howard. Probably Dwight Howard more than the others. Just because he's a huge baby and he just hasn't played up to his potential. And
you see that video that came out yesterday of Dwight Howard just straight up grabbing his teammate's junk?
Yeah. Isaiah Cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. Well,
but yeah, J-Rod, I agree with your players. But sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
No, you're good. We were just talking about people that we don't like and people that, so that got me thinking about players that we do like.
Yeah.
And naturally, of course, I think Luke Walton.
So
sure. when you think Luke Walton, you think, wow, didn't he have a dad who was pretty good at basketball? And yeah, he did. Bill Walton. Recently came out with a semi-bold claim saying, quote, that Michael Jordan was average. Yes, we were talking about basketball. We're not talking about baseball because I think he might have been below average for a professional baseball player. But seems like a bit of a bold claim. As I said, I don't think anyone's really ever said anything remotely along the lines of that. As far as the comment, it's concerning more of his strength, his jumping ability, his speed, which still seems a bit ludicrous considering the stats that he's put up over his career. So, Rahul, what do you think about what our boy Bill has said about Jordan's athleticism?
I don't even understand what it means. He said Michael Jordan is average in terms of his strength. Well, he was a shooting guard, so there's going to be guys that are stronger than him. In terms of his speed, I guess there's guys that can run real fast but probably suck at basketball. He said his height. His height. What does that mean? You're going to rip on Michael Jordan because he wasn't 10 feet tall? I don't understand. And then the other thing he said was his jumping ability. Like what? Michael Jordan had a 48-inch vertical of 48. That's 4 feet. That's average, I guess. So I don't even know what to say about that. I don't even know why they were talking about that. He was commentating a USC Oregon game. So, yeah, I guess I don't know. Bill Walton's starting to. He's a few screws short of a hardware store or something at this point in his life. But, I don't know. I think it's just so dumb. J-Rod, please tell me you agree.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, just quickly. I think it came about somehow they were talking about like he didn't think that Michael Jordan was like one of the top 3 players of all time or something, and then he got into like, oh, he was averaging this and that, which I don't know who he thinks. I would be curious to think who he thought 3 better players were all time ahead of him.
I know he thought that Wilt was the best all time.
Yeah, he might be biased towards like the big man, like maybe
Yeah.
like Bill Russell and Kareem or something, but
Yeah.
still, like you can't. I don't think you can make these claims and expect to like not get some flack about it for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean we were talking a little before this podcast. I mean, like what has someone said that's like really outspoken that's been valid about Michael Jordan, and oh, he was, how can you criticize his play, and how can you say really anything like terrible about his game,
You- I will say this though. I think his acting in Space Jam could have been better.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, though.
It is a great movie. It is a great movie. Kurtzy, anything to add?
Not really a whole lot. I don't know if Bill was maybe just trying to get in the spotlight since apparently he's been relegated to announcing Pac-12 games in basketball, which I don't think anyone watches.
Yeah.
So yeah, not really a whole lot to add. But Luke, if you're listening, we still love you. Lost a little respect for your dad, but we'll have you on the show anytime.
Oh man.
All
Well,
right,
we're getting
yeah, I
into the
guess
best part of the season. Are you talking about trades, Johnny?
yeah, trades.
Let's talk about them.
Let's do it.
I'm pretty excited about this. So who should we start with? Let's start with Dragic to the Rockets. Have you guys heard these rumors? Apparently, the Suns might be looking to unload Goran Dragic, and one of the possible suitors are the Houston Rockets, who he's played for in the past. And then also I heard the LA Lakers might be possible suitors for Dragic, and they might try to sign him later. So, Kurt, any thoughts on Goran Dragic?
Yeah. Well, first of all, big shout out to Zoran Dragic. I'm sure he is more than capable of taking over for Goran in Phoenix. They're brothers, by the way, if you didn't know. And yeah, just the Suns kind of have 3 of the same players at guard that are all undersized, all kind of ball dominant, a lot of pick and roll, pick and pop kind of guys. So yeah, they it's kind of hard to play all 3 at the same time, which was their intent, but it's very hard to match up defensively when you have 3 guys that are around 6'1", 6'2" maybe on the floor. There's just going to be a lot of mismatches. So on the Suns end, it makes a lot of sense that you don't really need to keep all 3 of them. So if you can part with one of them and get something decent in return, that makes a lot of sense. As far as the Rockets, like right now they have Patrick Beverly, who is serviceable, I guess, but when you look at a lot of the elite teams in the West and in the league, Patrick Beverly is very far outmatched on offense. He's pretty solid defender, but as far as getting you buckets or really running the offense, he's not going to be able to do that. And they have James Harden, so it's really not a big deal. But I mean, that would be if the Rockets got him, that would be a pretty unbelievable pickup at this point in the season. And especially with Dwight being out, just having another playmaker on the floor, they can feed Joey Dorsey down low. That would be pretty huge.
Yeah, for real. I don't think anybody can feed Joey Dorsey.
JR, what do you think about Dragic in Houston?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting move. Obviously, Houston's always actively involved in the trade talks, and the GM is Daryl Morey is always looking to improve his team and get the players necessary to try to make a push for the a title. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Obviously Houston. I think the Isaiah Thomas signing was. I think it was a bargain for them in the off season for what
Oh,
they
for sure.
but still, like it kind of it's awkward with like the 3-point guards, and they really need some balance in terms of their lineups and some more front court depth. So I don't think they'll get anything in return from Houston in terms of front court depth because they don't really have any themselves. But a first rounder in return and maybe some other pieces, maybe like a trade exception or another pick, could be good because Gordon. It's also rumored he to the Lakers, which I don't know what the Lakers are gonna give up for him, but next summer he's probably gonna get a max contract from someone. Um, I think it's right at 4 years, 80 million. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think in terms of this move, it kind of addresses, I think, the contender that needs to make a move the most would be Houston in terms of its point guard play. Kurt, you talked about like Patrick Beverley, and obviously I have James Harden who handles the ball a lot, but they're really the only team I see as like a legitimate contender that has like a, you know, below
Glaring weak.
average point
Yeah.
guard. So, I mean, even a backup point guard is pretty key, come playoff time and stuff. So, yeah, I guess in terms of that, Rahul, feeding the question to you is in terms of what contender do you think needs to make a move the most, and maybe for what position as
I
going trade deadline?
yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's Houston at their point guard position. Patrick Beverley is not bad at all. Um, he's obviously mostly defensively oriented. He's got a of 12, which isn't great at all. Um, the issue isn't so much that Patrick Beverley is like a bad point guard. It's that the rest of the teams in the West all have like amazing point guards. Um, like I'm looking at some of these teams, and you have like Steph Curry, Mike Conley, Damian Lillard, Rondo, Chris Paul. Like the list goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like um, it's nice to have Beverly on your roster to cover those guys, but you also kind of need your own guy that can match up. So I'd say Houston at point guard probably needs it is like the biggest need. And then the Clippers, we talked about this before. I don't know why they traded for Austin Rivers. I still don't get it. Because they needed a wing player, and Austin Rivers is more of like a point guard or maybe a two. So yeah, basically just echoing your sentiments on Houston. But Kurt, anything to add?
Well, not a whole lot now. I was gonna say that the Clippers need a wing player, which is just kind of a glaring need. If you look at their roster right now, they pretty much have Matt Barnes and Hito Turkoglu, who like their combined PER is less than Blake Griffin's and also less than Chris Paul's. and barely above DeAndre Jordan's. But basically, well, Hito hardly offers anything defensively, and he's just not shooting at a terribly. He's shooting efficiently, but he barely ever shoots the ball. So he's just not really doing a whole lot there. He's actually shooting 48% from three, but he only averages 1.5 per game, and he only plays about 10 minutes a game too. But yeah, Matt Barnes he's getting the chunk of the minutes. He's getting about 30 minutes per game. He's okay on defense. He's shooting right around 37% from three, which is fine. But especially with Blake Griffin out, they don't really have a lot of playmakers on that team. It's pretty much Chris Paul and then Jamal Crawford off the bench. JJ Redick runs around a lot of screens, and credit for him for finding a way to fit in the league, because it didn't seem like he had a whole lot to offer aside from shooting at the beginning, but he's stuck around for a while, so that's good. But DeAndre Jordan's just going to be getting offensive rebounds and dunking the ball off lobs. He's not really going to create anything. Spencer Hawes can't either. Austin Rivers, the only thing he creates are turnovers, and there's just not a whole lot of playmaking on this team. So I think that if they're gonna seriously try to make a push, especially now with Blake out, like, they need to get somebody on their team aside from Chris Paul and Jamal, because they're not going to be able to carry the load every night in a tough conference and expect to make the playoffs.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. I think there's needs on both teams. One thing I want to add real quick is, I don't know if we were just talking about the West, but if we're going to look at the East for teams that need to make a move, I look at Miami, and once they get like Dwayne Wade back, and like with Hassan Whiteside coming on pretty strong, I think that'd be a scary team to play if they had any semblance of a point guard. Because right now they got three guys that just like don't know what they're doing. They have Chalmers, Norris Cole, and Shabazz Napier. So that's just a mess. So I'm not sure who they could go after. Maybe like a Jameer Nelson or like anybody. Like, they could sign me, and they'd probably win more games that way. But just a thought. J-Rod, anything to add to contenders and moves and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, just going off, I guess, the Miami point guards, it's rumored that, obviously with Shabazz getting more minutes, Norris Cole is kind of getting less of those, and he's kind of on the trade block, I guess, in a sense now. So I think he's been rumored, he played at Cleveland State and everything. He's been rumored to possibly be acquired by the Cavaliers, along with another point guard from the Nuggies, Jameer Nelson. So, we've talked, I guess, at length that, possibly backup point guard upgrades. I guess also going along with that, do you think, I think our boy Brian Windhorst brought up the point that you look at the Bulls game, and do you think we need another big man? I mean, do you think we should acquire someone like Miles Plumlee or something? Or what do you think about, like, I guess another trade the Cavs could make?
Well, yeah, I guess first of all, big shout out to my boy Matthew Dellavedova for always giving it his all. It just happens to not usually be good enough in the NBA. So with that being said, like, yeah, I like Dellavedova, and he can make wide open threes, but he's supposed to be a point guard, and he can barely dribble the ball up the court without freaking out, or at least freaking the viewers out and his teammates out probably. He doesn't do a whole lot except for like take 3 dribbles and hand the ball off to somebody. He's like afraid to pass, I guess. Literally has to hand the ball off. So That being said, if it came down for me, if it came down between Jameer Nelson and Norris Cole, I'd definitely rather have Jameer. At least he's had some playoff experience. He's been around for a long time. I think that would just be, I think that would really shore up that position with somebody who's, been around the league and knows what they're doing and is able to dribble the ball. So that would be a nice addition to have for sure. As far as a big man, um, well, Brian Windhorst probably didn't realize that Kevin Love didn't play yesterday, so that would be why our front court looked extra depleted. But since it's a corny location, it's not like, I don't even know what that means. I guess it means his eye got scratched.
Yeah.
And he'll be fine. It's not like he tore his ACL or MCL or anything like that. So I think we're fine on the big man front. That's just me personally. Rahul, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we'll be fine too. And like, it's never good to trust Verjao, but once he's back next year, and assuming we retain Kevin Love, I think we have a solid like front four. Um, I mean, if we can sign someone like in the interim for like the end of the year, um, that's fine. But I don't know. I'm not too excited about any possibilities like Miles Plumlee. I think I'd rather just go small and put like Sean Marion at power forward for a little bit if that's the case. Um, and as far as the point guard talk, like I've said before, like I think you guys dislike Dellavedova like way more than I do. Um, obviously he's got his limitations. It's pretty obvious. But he does shoot 40% from three. I think the reason that they do need to sign a point guard is, well, what if Dellavedova or Kyrie Irving gets hurt? Especially like, what if Kyrie Irving gets hurt? We can't go into the playoffs with Dellavedova as our point guard. So like, obviously Jameer Nelson isn't as good as he used to be, but like, I'd probably rather have him starting than Dellavedova. So we also have an open roster spot, right?
Yeah.
So why not, right? Let's talk about real quick some other players on the trade block right now. Denver's like whole team is like on the trade block.
Yeah.
They're seeking a first rounder for Aaron Aflalo. I think Wilson Chandler is also on the trade block too. He's been rumored to go to teams like Atlanta or Los Angeles Clippers. And then there's always guys like Randy Foy and Jameer Nelson, like we talked about. Also, Amari Stoudemire is looking for a buyout, so he's another possible player. And then Enes Kanter might want to trade from Utah. So, anything you guys want to say on those guys? Any possible deals you could see going down? Any possible ideas? Jared?
Yeah. So yeah, you look at the Nuggets. They're obviously making their players available because they're trying to kind of clean house almost with the team, which is smart. I think Aaron Aflalo is an intriguing player that a possible contender could really use. So I think Chicago as well as Atlanta has been kind of rumored to possibly acquire him. I think they're, like you said, they're seeking a first rounder, so it's a pretty hefty price to pay. And then I think Amari was kind of rumored to possibly join Dallas, so I think that could be a decent move actually if he gives them a few good minutes here and there. They need front court help obviously too. So and then you have like Randy Foy and Jameer Nelson as well. A few other names being floated around. So yeah, I think those Nuggets players could help in a contender, and I think some teams are really looking to upgrade at the trade deadline because it seems like a lot of teams feel like they have like they can contend for the title this year. There's not really I mean, you have the Warriors, yes, and you have the Hawks in the East, but there's not really a clear favorite this year, it seems. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. The trade deadline's Thursday, so I think that the talks will heat up, after this All-Star weekend. But Kurt, what do you see with these guys, and who do you think is like the most intriguing out of these players?
For me, I think I really like the Amare in Dallas fit. He's not the player he once was, but he'd be able to provide 15, maybe 20 minutes of solid play a night, and just another offensive weapon. Kind of a jump shooter kind of guy, space the floor a little as a four. Hopefully they have enough red wine in Dallas for his baths, which I'm sure he'd hate to have to build another tub somewhere. But actually, yeah, between Amare and Cantor mainly because I don't think I've ever seen Utah play on national TV, so I really don't know anything about him. I know he was well thought of coming into when he was drafted, and I'm imagining he's probably a pretty solid player because Utah, just in recent memory, have had Al Jefferson and Paul Millsap that they both let go because they wanted to keep and develop Enes Kanter and Derek Favors. So maybe the management is very incompetent, and that was a terrible decision because, well, Al Jefferson is incredibly good, and Paul Millsap's an all-star. So, maybe we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. But I think I'm not exactly sure what the asking price for Cantor would be. But
Yeah, I
that's a
don't
guy
know.
that I'd be very interested to see if anyone like a contender gets him and he is actually able to contribute solid minutes.
Yeah, he's not a bad player at all. And he's young. He's 22 years old. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think
Oh, actually,
the emergence of Rudy Gobert probably has something to do with it too. But
while we're on the Cantor discussion, do either of you know what happened to Jan Vesely? Wasn't he drafted by the Wizards, maybe sixth or something?
Oh
Is that
yeah,
in the same draft?
wow.
I don't remember hearing anything about that guy. I don't even know if he's in the league, if he's playing overseas. Do you got either of you know? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
he was a total bust. I'm pretty sure
he
he's somewhere in Europe now.
yeah, he's out of the NBA for sure.
Yeah, he was on the
Wow.
Wizards, which if you look at the Wizards too, like the way they drafted, they just missed on a lot of like high picks and are still like pretty good. So that's interesting to
Yeah.
see too.
He is currently in Turkey.
Oh,
Turkey!
Yeah,
Semi.
yeah, dude. You with
Enes
our boy
Kanter
Semih
too?
or
Turkish. A lot of Turks floating around.
The Turks are great. I love the Turks.
Right.
They make great baklava actually.
Oh
So
yeah.
you know.
I actually just saw that the Wizards are also interested in trying to bring Jameer Nelson in,
Huh.
which I don't
That's
know
weird.
why, because they have John Wall and Andre Miller, so I don't know
PhD.
where exactly he would fit. I don't know
Right.
exactly where he'd fit in, but
Huh.
yeah, I was just trying to look up some quick stats on Vesely. Well, I don't know. He's had a pretty solid career. He had over 50% field goal percentage and never attempted a three. His free throw percentage one season was 26.7. That's pretty good.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yikes.
averaged a pretty solid 3.6 points per game and 3.5 rebounds per game in his 162 game career.
Kurt, those are like
So
your middle school basketball numbers.
no, well, yeah, seventh grade, yeah, but not eighth grade. Eighth grade, I scored 4 points in the whole season, so
Uh, that's pretty
pretty
solid.
proud, pretty proud of those. And two of them came in like the first game in the first like 30 seconds that I was in, and then I only shot the ball like two other times the whole season. I think I made some free throws.
Oh,
It
sick.
was a pretty solid year for me.
Dang, homie.
Yeah, I know. But we were just touching on just some trades. So apparently the Nets were offered a trade for Brook Lopez involving J.J. Hickson and JaVale McGee
JaVale
and a first
McGee.
rounder. Apparently several trades. So anyone have any quick thoughts on that trade? Brook Lopez obviously has had a bunch of injury problems. I'm kind of wondering what exactly his shelf life is in the NBA, what he's going to be able to contribute to a team because he can barely stay on the floor. So Johnny, what do you think about that? Should the Nets try to dump Lopez and get something for him while they can, or should they hold on to him?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, we a few podcasts ago, I think we mentioned that Charlotte was trying to acquire him
Mm-hmm.
in a trade with Lance Stevenson, and this offer by Denver's actually pretty hefty with two bigs and a first rounder for him. So I don't know if they're like kind of holding out for like the best offer or what, but yeah, I think they should try to, you know, dump him and see the best players they can get for him. Obviously he comes with a pretty, I think he has a $15 million salary around, and then obviously his injury troubles. So if they can get some, picks and maybe some younger players for their future, that I think that would be good. Rahul, what do you think about Brook Lopez and the Nets, possibly moving him before the trade deadline?
Yeah, Brook Lopez is like the scariest player. I would just never want him on my team. Like he can't be depended on. Like if that's your center going into the playoffs or something like that, there's like a 75% chance he's gonna get hurt, and that's just it sucks because skillfully he's not bad at all. Um, the Nets traded away like all of their picks when they got Paul Pierce and Joe Johnson, Kevin Garnett. So um, I would totally have done that trade if I were the Nets, but I don't know. The Nets are just a kind of a messed up team.
Yeah.
So anything to add to that, Kurt?
No, I pretty much wholeheartedly agree with what you said, that I would dump him immediately and get anything I could for him, especially like a first round pick for a franchise that has been throwing their first rounders away on, well, to get Paul Pierce and KG, and now they barely have any picks at all. So it'd certainly be nice to be able to build your roster through the draft, even if all Prokhorov wants to draft are Russians. Yeah, I don't really understand holding on to them like this season. Yeah, they could still maybe make the playoffs, but at one point you kind of just say the experiment was pretty much a disaster considering the expectations, and I think at some point you just got to cut your losses and start rebuilding because yeah, maybe he might be the only piece that they can build around, but like if that's your best piece to build around, and there's no guarantee that he's going to play 82 games in any, like, it's not even going to be, he's probably going to play about half the season. That's just not going to be good enough. So I would dump him and run. Which also brings us to another interesting player. Obviously, we know that the Thunder recently acquired Dion Waiters from the Cavaliers, whose skill set is semi-redundant with Reggie Jackson's, who also comes off the bench for the Thunder. So, Johnny, there is a rumor that Reggie Jackson might be one of the Nuggies. Do you think the Thunder should trade him?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to, obviously the Nuggies are heavily involved in these trade talks, but there was rumors earlier in the year that I think after this year he's a free agent. So, and it seems like he doesn't want to, return to OKC, or OKC actually probably, I think, doesn't want to pay him big money to basically be a backup point guard to Russell Westbrook. So, if they can trade him, I think they should, and get something in return before he walks for nothing, basically. So, um, yeah, Kurt, what do you think? What do you think?
Well, I just wanted to add something quick that
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's publicly stated that he wants to be a starting point guard. So obviously, if he stays in Oklahoma City, that isn't going to happen.
right.
So I agree that I think he's definitely if his free agency starts coming into next year,
Yeah,
like if he's a free agent this summer, like he's not gonna stay.
yeah,
Yeah.
So I agree. They if the time is now. If they want to get anything for him, they should do that. Unless they think he's the missing piece to win the championship, then I would keep him. But seems like just based on the fact that they didn't retain Harden, I
yeah,
feel like there's just no way that they're gonna retain Reggie Jackson then at that point. So I think that I hope they don't make the same mistake twice in letting a talent. Obviously, Reggie Jackson at this point is not James Harden, and he probably is not going to be anywhere near James Harden in the next few years. But just letting a young talented guy like that walk, I don't know. I don't know. I'd be surprised if they made the same mistake twice. Sorry, but yeah, if you have anything else to add, keep going.
yeah. No, I think that was just about it. That yeah, I think they should trade him if they can get something decent in return before he walks for nothing. Rahul, any thoughts on Reggie Jackson and whether the Thunder, what they should want in return, I guess, for him or from the Nuggies?
Um, well, they're probably gonna at least ask for a first round pick. I don't think they're really gonna get whatever value Reggie Jackson brings back to the table because they're not really they don't have any leverage because everybody knows Reggie Jackson's gonna walk.
Mm.
Um, I think Deion Waiters has definitely struggled. Like he's just been playing the same the whole season. It's not like he went to Oklahoma City and got any better, as far as I can see at least. Um, so I don't know if he does get traded to the Nuggets, maybe someone like Aaron Aflalo could slide in real nice, um, like right in that starting two spot, because that's kind of I guess the weakest position for Oklahoma City right now. Um, but it's just sad because I don't think Deion Waiters is is really going to solve anything. I think he's false security basically. So yeah. So let's finish up here by talking about kind of heading into the All Star break and looking at the teams around the league. Um, who do you think really welcomes this All Star break? Who's been struggling and who needs this break? Kurt, I'll start with you.
I think for me, there are two teams that would come down to, but I'm gonna go with the Eastern Conference team, which would be the Washington Wizards. They are 4-6 in their last 10. They've kind of just, in general, been struggling. They dropped to the 4 seed, got bypassed by Chicago, and seem to be trending downward. Only a half game ahead of Cleveland and 2.5 games ahead of Milwaukee. So if they don't shape up quick, then things could definitely be going downhill very, very quickly. Obviously, not going to get much worse than the 6 seed because of the huge gap between the 6 and 7 seed in the East. But just the way they've been playing, and granted, if you look at their schedule, some of their recent losses, they've won 2 of their last 8, but their losses include at Phoenix, versus Toronto, versus Charlotte when Charlotte was still hot, then at Atlanta, at Charlotte again, and then just at Toronto again. So that's a pretty tough slate of games. But if you look at their schedule even further, it's just a lot. Basically, they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, which are the weaker teams in the East. And when it comes to playing a solid opponent, they pretty much lose. So, that's great for the regular season, I guess. It's going to get you a decent seed, especially in the East. But as far as like playoff aspirations, that's a terrible sign. And their first game back from the All-Star break is actually at home against the Cavs on ESPN on that Friday, a week from today. So it'll be interesting to see, with both teams, the Wizards trending downward and the Cavs trending way upward, which way each of those trends continues, or if they both change, or one stays and one changes. But if I was the Wizards, I'd be pretty concerned, and I'm sure they're very welcoming this break. So that would definitely be my team for sure. Johnny, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess moving on to a team in the West, I guess we covered a little bit with the Goran Dragic trade talk. I would say the Phoenix Suns. They've kind of limped into this All-Star break, and they've actually lost the last five of the last six. Granted, again, it was against some quality teams, and Golden State, Memphis, Portland, Houston. With the only win coming against the Jazz, and then they before that they actually two impressive victories against the Wizards and Bulls. But yeah, I think Phoenix, they're with OKC playing better. I think they only have like a half game lead on the Thunder for that 8th seed now. So the pressure is on them now, and it's tough because you look at last year. The Suns, going into this season, people thought they were going to be a lottery team, and they really surprised everyone, but they still didn't make the playoffs. And it kind of looks like the same story this year, being the 9 or 10 seed, which is like one of the worst, places to be in the NBA, it seems. Just on that cusp of, the playoffs, or on that 7-8 slot. So yeah, the Suns, it seems the Thunder are breathing down their necks, and then the Pellies, if they get the Brow back healthy with his shoulder, it's got to be tough for them down the stretch. You look at their last kind of like 10 or 15 game stretch. It's within like their division, and it's against a lot of tough Western opponents. So yeah, I see OKC probably taking, at least the 8 seed, maybe the 7. But yeah, Rahul, what team do you think is kind of, embracing this All-Star break? Kind of a team that's struggling.
Well, I agree with you both. I will throw out a third team. I think the Charlotte Hornets, who I think I've been calling the Bobcats like for the last 5 years. The Hornets, I think, could really use the All-Star break. They're not bad in their last 10. They're 5-5 in their last 10, but they have lost their last 3 games, and those games were to the 76ers, the Pacers, and the Pistons.
Ooh.
And when you're in the East, and let's see, they are the 7th seed. There's 5 teams behind them that are within 2 games, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So every little game counts. So I think it'll be a nice time for them to regroup. They just got Mo Williams, so maybe a little bit of practice will help them. And then obviously it buys some more time for Kemba Walker. So I think Charlotte really needed this break as well. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. I still think they make the playoffs, but all right. Anything else you guys want to say or add?
No, I think that's about it. I think we covered a good amount of trade talks and everything. Yeah, you guys got anything any other topics you want to cover for tonight, or?
I want to give a quick shout out.
Of course, as
The
per
weekly
usual.
shout out.
Yeah, this one is gonna go to Monet Davis. I unfortunately, but not really unfortunately, missed the celebrity game kind of intentionally. But I did, thanks to you guys, find out that she had a pretty sick move on Kevin Hart, and found out that she's aspiring to play basketball for UConn, which would be awesome because we were looking at some of those scores, and they beat Cincinnati by 65 this year, so that's impressive. But yeah, just a quick shout out for that. Like, it is a pretty impressive move, and I'm sure Kevin wouldn't admit it, but it looked like he was actually trying on defense, and he
Yeah.
got completely I think he lost his trousers. So just a quick shout out there. So that's all I got.
Nice. I got a shout out to LeBron James, who was named the NBA Players Association Vice President today.
Oh, okay.
So there's
Cool.
that. Yeah. So J-Rod, what do we have coming up on site? I know we were a little bit slow this week. So
Yeah.
everybody's got
Hopefully
jobs and
get
stuff.
it going a little more this
Yeah.
week with some articles. So yeah, hopefully Deacon will have his he'll continue his Quidditch segment with another kind of hopefully releasing like the teams he was making up for that. And then Rahul, you'll have your weekend review for tomorrow.
Yeah.
As well as we might release a group, I guess, semi-pro staff questions on the All-Star game, kind of a 5-on-5 thing. We might release that before the All-Star stuff happens tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that, and then obviously myself and Kurt's preview for Sunday as well. And then yeah, hopefully that next week I guess is kind of a extended break for the NBA in terms of not many games going on. I think it might resume on Thursday or so. So yeah, that might be a good time for us to crank out some articles on some things we can reflect on after the All-Star break. But yeah, you guys got anything else?
Nope, that's
No,
it for me.
sounds pretty good.
All right, cool. Well, everyone, thank you for listening, and yeah, stay tuned, and hopefully this All-Star weekend will be enjoyable. So yeah, thanks again.